This is Talk is Sheep, a podcast by the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Come along as we take conversations that matter to you into the high alpine.
Mr. Hamilton, the one-handed bandit.
For reasons outside of other people's thought processes, yes, I am the one-handed bandit right now. I just had a surgery on my hand. So all good.
Yeah, so glad to have you back, and glad it didn't keep you down. So it's been a weird couple of weeks for our listeners. I've been away and you've been away, so it's been we've been kind of recording. We've heard from you guys. You want it weekly, so we're doing everything we can to keep it on track. But we couldn't get Steve and I together at the same time. He was away, I was away, and so you and Greg did the heavy lifting on the last couple. We just had Mauled come out, and man, what a success! Nothing like a bear attack to get the ratings up, right?
Holy what an episode! I think I did the intros for the first 3-4 minutes, and then when I said to Jeremy, "Well, let's hear your story," it was 45 minutes. Greg and I just sat there dumbfounded, just listening and taking in every word he said. It was just incredible. If you haven't listened to it, find it. I believe it's 94. It was so good, so good.
Yeah, and just our not that we're ratings fiends, we're doing it for what I think is the right reason, but we seen the charts and it went through the roof. So I was joking to you and Greg that I can sit back and retire now that you guys have got things firmly in hand. The best ratings so far for the show. But anyway, thanks to our listeners for tuning in. If you haven't listened to that, Mauled is a great episode. And we've had tons of feedback, more so than any other show we've done, podcast. So, yeah, tune into it. Really cool and great work. And then we followed up with Joe Karpinski, which BC native, and he talks sheep hunting. And, you guys wanted hunting stories. We gave you one. And, so we'd love to hear your feedback. If you like it, we'll do more. If not, then we'll do a little bit less. But we want to mix it up a bit with some local sheep hunting stories.
Oh, speaking of sheep hunting, what do we got on the raffle side?
Yeah, so very cool. We've released our wild sheep raffles. It's just over a week now. It's almost 2 weeks. And we've got a great lineup this year. This is our biggest lineup ever. People keep telling us, hey, give us more. We want to support you guys. So as always, we've got our desert sheep, our bighorn out of Sierra El Alamo out of Mexico. They're killing some massive rams down there. So anyone that needs to finish off their fanaz, their slam, whatever you want to call it, that's a great opportunity. And with a very reputable outfitter in Sierra El Alamo, they do a great job down there. Great hunting opportunity. This year, new for 2020, 2022, 2023, is a polar bear hunt. So bucket list item. How many people get to go and enjoy this? Northwest Territories, and this is a hunt of a lifetime. So we've heard switch it up this year. We've switched it up. We've heard, let's look at some international hunts, but with, the way the world is right now, we just wanted to keep it local, so you don't have to worry about travel restrictions or anything. It's a Canadian hunt in the territories, polar bear hunt with a reputable outfitter, and just world-class hunt, so check that out. And then our staples, we've got our caribou or grizzly bear. You get to choose between which one you want with the Midnight Sun Outfitters. Great outfit. Jordan Kemp was our winner last year, and he killed a massive boo. He's just stoked about it. There's going to be an article in our magazine, not in this fall edition, but this winter. He's writing an article for us, and he killed a massive boo and just had a great hunt. So great opportunity there. And, of course, Silver Sage Outfitters coming to us with that antelope hunt in Alberta. And lastly, our Bonnie's Ultimate Sheep Camp, which this year we've taken it up a notch. We've got a fierce rifle in there. This package is worth another $5,000 over and above what it's ever been. So great package we put together there. Ken Thibodeau's supporting us with the sheep mount, and Barney's, of course, Sitka gear, and that fierce rifle. So just a great lineup. So yeah, lots of raffles. And of course, Steve, we can't forget our one campfire raffle, which is we're half sold out now. That thing's going to be gone. It's not going to see the draw date. It's going to sell out ahead of time. And what's that package worth? 10 grand or something?
About 10 grand. Yeah. But we've got, what have we got in there? We got a wall tent, stove, a generator, chainsaw, some Vortex stuff, some Yeti stuff, some sleeping bags. It's everything you need for a base camp, like not a sheep camp, but a base camp. If you're going out hunting moose, or if you're just recreating in the backcountry and you want to bring some family, some friends, this has everything you need. So yeah, grab those tickets as well.
Yeah, very cool, and great package you put together there, Steve. I think there's a generator in that too. So just, yeah, great setup. And so go to our website, click on Wild Sheep Raffles. It's through Durrell. You do it all online electronically. It's selling well. I think the first week we sold 15% of the tickets. So again, we anticipate the sellout. Great support from you guys. And again, if it doesn't take, if you don't want to win some great stuff, this really moves the needle for our conservation efforts in British Columbia. So, we keep putting more money on the ground for wild sheep and wildlife in British Columbia, and it's because you support us through these raffles. So, great opportunity to win. And unlike, buying a lotto ticket, yeah, sure, it's great to have that chance, but where does that money go? You probably don't want to know, but this money for WSR is going to a good cause. So thank you for your support. Let's keep it rolling. And yeah, just before we jump into the podcast, let's talk about sheep harvest. So we've been talking to the government. I spoke to Bill Jex a couple of weeks ago, and anecdotally, they don't have final numbers yet, but hats off to you, hunters in British Columbia. Our harvest success rate and actually not success rate, our harvest rate on underage rams has dropped significantly. There's still a few kinks to work out, but last year was really bad for BC. And happy to report that this year is much, much better. So hats off to everyone. And I think that's a testament to the education piece that we put out there. I can't wait till we get back in session for Kamloops and we can do this face-to-face and people can do some horn aging and some judging and just get their hands on some horns and have a better understanding of harvest strategies for sheep in BC.
Oh yeah, you can look at all the pictures you want, but until you actually put your hands on the horns, it's like, holy crap. And you have somebody that is an expert in aging go, that's a false, this is a real, this is a lamb tip, this is what broomed is. You can hear it all, but when you can always learn. And as evidenced by what we're hearing, it seems like it's working for people. So yeah, good work.
Yeah, right on. Okay, so episode 96. Old Cal, you've been working on this one for a long time, Steve.
Oh, yeah.
When we get these influencers, it's tough, right? These guys, everyone wants a piece of Ryan Callaghan. They want a piece of, so, testament to you to get him on the show. Unfortunately, you were away that week, and of course, Ryan's time's limited, so we took it when we could, and I'm sorry that you missed it. But this is a great chat with Cal. It's what you expect from Ryan. He's down to earth. So anyway, anyone that doesn't know Ryan Callaghan, I'm sure everyone does, but he is the director of conservation at Meat Eater. And he's had a huge influence on the hunting space when it comes to influencers and social media and been in front of the camera for a long time. So, I learned some really cool stuff from Ryan. We had a pretty honest conversation and just really enjoyed sitting down with him and getting to know a bit more about him, and really enjoyed this BS session with Ryan Callaghan from Meat Eater.
Yeah, when I was putting this together, it took a few months. We were back and forth through text and emails. It wasn't. He was exactly what you see on TV and on YouTube. He was that person, and sucks that I missed it, but I'm glad it was able to come together for you guys, and hope everybody likes the episode.
Yeah, and he said he'd come back, so we'll sort it out when you got some free time, and we'll do it again at a later date. So, and we talk about bear attacks with Ryan Callaghan on this one. So more bear stories,
right? Smell me now, Mom.
Yeah, awesome, cool. All right, well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're off to episode 96 with Old Cal. Enjoy.
Across Canada and throughout the world, if you come across a campfire in the woods, on a mountaintop, or next to a river, you'll find warm company and friendly people gathered around. Regardless of your lifestyle or place you call home, We invite you to learn more about what it means to be a hunter in the modern era. If you love the outdoors, care about where your food comes from, and are concerned for the future of wildlife and the environments that they need to survive, pull up a seat. We have a story to tell. Welcome to our campfire.
Cal, awesome, man. I can't thank you for coming on the show and being part of our podcast here. Really excited to have you on.
Excited to be here. It's a long time coming. We've been working on this for quite a while.
Well, and it's not like you're not in demand, right? So I know you get 100 requests a day. So honestly, really humbled that you come on the show, and really excited just to talk about what's going on in the meat eater world, what's going on in Cal's world, and just what's happening in the hunting side of things. So really stoked about the show today.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I'm interested in learning on what's happening on the sheep end of things too. So
right on. So anyway, I know most people don't need any intros on Ryan Callaghan, but let's just do that. I guess you're coming live from Bozeman today, are you?
Yes, right? Sir. Bozeman, Montana, headquarters of Meat Eater, where I'm the director of conservation.
Right on. So, I've been following you for a decade now, probably back, certainly back to First Light days. So maybe just talk a little bit about your journey, about how, where you started and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I really always just very enamored with anything outdoors, and really never was able to shake that kind of compassion for being outside. So I did everything I could to stay outside, and, wrecked my college career, but always found myself guiding, fishing or hunting, and some whitewater here and there, and or working outside in some fashion. And through that guiding career, I ended up working for a number of production companies, actually, because he'd end up guiding TV shows or something here and there, and it was through a combination of those things that I started working at First Light, and that was probably 2007. I started doing some work for Kenton and Scott in the absolute infancy of the business, and then came on full time ish 2011, and I then through First Light kind of ran into Steve Ranella in a funny way. A buddy of mine was working on bison conservation and the idea of restoring a bison herd here in Montana through National Wildlife Federation. And he's like, yeah, we're working with this author. He's got this great American Buffalo book, and I guess he's got some sort of a TV show. But I think you guys would get along, and that was kind of right when they had first started filming Meat Eater, and they had wrapped up their seasons of The Wild Within, which was like the first show that Steve did. And we kind of he asked what I thought about guiding some first timers, or helping out with some first timers rather, on the Missouri River. And that was Joe Rogan and Brian Callaghan. And I tried to get out of it every which way I could, because from a guide perspective, somebody who made his living doing that, I thought there couldn't be anything more miserable than taking two dudes from LA, Hollywood dudes from LA, hunting for the first time. But some friends encouraged me to suck it up and do it. And I did. And Joe and Brian were awesome folks, and turned out to be a great experience. And after that show, Steve and the then producer of Meat Eater was like, well, what else do you have going on? And kind of the rest is history there.
Right on. So you talked about this young passion for anything outdoors. Was that ingrained through your family ties? And did you hunt as a kid, and was your family into hunting, or how did that?
Well, it's kind of interesting. So my mom's side of the family, huge family here in Montana, and it'd be like some casual hunting, but a lot of agriculture in the family. So like lots of time outside, lots of time with animals. And, I think kind of a typical amount of hunting for folks that see themselves on like the agriculture side of things. And then my dad's side of the family, also here in Montana, they had largely, there's some big game hunting in the past, but largely the only hunting that they did by the time I came along was for Canada geese, and that was it. And they considered themselves goose hunters, and that was a fun scene to be around. But it was, very social. And, it was definitely like, they're like fun, competitive folks, a lot of athletics on that side of the family. And, they liked getting geese, but that certainly wasn't like the entire point of everybody meeting up on the weekends. So, right. Yeah.
So where did that lead you? So was your first stuff bird hunting, or, where did you get into where'd you get the hunting bug then, I guess, really?
Boy, I just always had it. My mom would get me like Outdoor Life as a birthday present every year. And I just devoured that stuff. And I was lucky enough to grow up right on the edge of the rattlesnake wilderness here in Montana outside of Missoula, and spent just a ton of time on Rattlesnake Creek and in the wilderness area. And I could actually connect the grade school that I went to via the river system. And I'd come home from school, walk home a couple of miles through the river every day, and which was real surprising if I ever brought any friends home. Because it was a challenge if you didn't like getting muddy and wet every day. A lot of stinging nettles in my youth too. So, and then, oddly enough, I'd pester my dad into being outside all the time. Like I said, they're very much an organized athletics family, big football family specifically. And it was like the last thing I wanted to do was be in organized sports during the fall. But he had a secretary whose husband was a outfitter. And that was like, once I figured that out, that was just my full-time mentor. And I would pester the heck out of that guy with endless questions, and he had endless patience for it, and follow him around as much as I could, and kind of learned that guiding outfitting business from him, and spent a ton of time with him. And that was the first outfitter that I worked for here in Montana.
How old would you have been when you went on that first sort of, whatever, helping him out on those first hunts?
Oh, probably 13 or 14, I think. Yeah.
That's so cool.
And was just with him as much as possible. And the guy was, he would, work subtly to encourage my dad to let me skip school and stuff. Like he had, this guy, he had a master's in wildlife management from the University of Colorado, but he was way more invested in encouraging me to stay outside as much as possible, and learn the guiding side of things. So he provided a lot of excuses to miss some days in my high school career for sure.
Yeah, that's perfect. So. So was it big game stuff you were guiding for, or what kind of stuff were you at that stage? What were you doing?
So at that stage, it was all big game, and it was, primarily antelope. I helped out on a bunch of elk stuff. But then when I first was legally guiding, it was antelope and some deer. And then by that point, I started picking up, trying to fill in the rest of my season with guiding. So it'd be whitewater when the rivers were high and crappy, and as soon as they cleared up, it'd be fishing, and then would cut fishing season short to get back into hunting, and then would run that as much as long as I could, and then would, help out outfitters, and some of the production folks that I ended up working for at like during trade show season, and kind of fill the calendar in that way.
Did I think on one of the shows, Steve talks about your guiding career, and I think he mentioned BC. Did you do some guiding up here in British Columbia?
Yeah. So actually it's not going to be good for the recording, but there's a moose hanging behind my head here on the screen. And that's a BC moose. Only moose that I ever put a tag on. Can't say it's the only moose I've shot, but cool. So during those years when the oil sands were really pumping, that provided some Yankees some opportunity to come up and guide, because the outfitter, British Columbia Outfitter and Guides Association, was very adamant about the lack of qualified people to guide during those years, because everybody was up making big time money in the oil sands.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So what kind of stuff did you do in BC here then? What were you guiding for up here?
Black bear, some spring black bear, and then in the fall, grizzly, moose, and some goat.
Wow. So you got the real BC experience then, if you're doing mountain hunting and all that sort of stuff too, eh? So.
Oh yeah. And, folks who like really have the idea, like the brown bear hunting, the mountain grizzly was just incredible. Like so much fun, so challenging, would really get remote, and just great, beautiful country, and like a mountain grizzly in the fall with winter coming on does not sit still, So it was great. It was really fun.
Yeah. That's still one of my favorite things. Yeah, I was on a sheep hunt this fall, and we seen 4 grizz, sow and 3 cubs, and yeah, it's just one of my favorite things when I'm out there, just seeing those grizzly on the landscape. They're so majestic, incredible, eh? And it really makes me sad that we don't get to hunt them anymore. But so really cool to have guided that and had that experience, eh?
Oh yeah, just incredible, incredibly fortunate, and just watching bears that feel really confident in where they are on the food chain. It's an animal that behaves like no other animals, right? They like a big boar grizzly or a big sow. They don't fear a whole lot, so they fill in some of that time of, nervously checking the wind every 30 seconds with some actual leisure time, which is incredible to see, some play and some leisure. And then when you watch them really get down to business and dig for squirrels and cover ground doing that, and the amount of earth and the size of the rocks and stuff that they move is, it'd be hard to have the level of appreciation for that animal that you gain from watching them do those things that any way else, it's like watching them really, again, have that confidence of where they are in the food chain, their ability to like bask out in the sun and relax, like legs spread, all their soft parts to the sun. Like no other animals really get to do that, and then when they're throwing VW sized boulders down the mountain looking for a squirrel nest, it's awe-inspiring. They're an awesome animal. Yeah,
that's a great description. So, as a mountain guide, you see a lot of grizzly bears, and as a grizzly mountain guide, you see even more. And I'm pretty sure there's probably some harrowing experiences for most grizzly guides. Now, there's that famous "Smell Me Now" lady scene that is phenomenal. You guys caught that on camera, but for our listeners, you guys had that encounter with a grizzly. Is there any worse than that, or is that the worst one? And if it is, talk me through it. And if there's a worse one, I want to hear that one.
Well, there's nothing worse, right? Like when you're in the guide position, everybody is your responsibility. And there were a lot of people on the mountain, and they're very much on your mind. And that makes it worse. But the first time I got charged by a grizz was a smaller sow, considerably smaller. I judged her as like a first-time mom, and I had 2 yellow labs at the time, and I poured everything I had into training those dogs, and it very well could have saved my bacon on this deal. But we were out on an early spring kind of shed hunt, looking for mushrooms, really just taking advantage of a day off that hadn't come around in a long time. And cut through this strip of timber and saw some flashes of, kind of gold going through the timber. And I remember thinking, like, the part of my brain that wanted to calm myself down was like, oh, it's a bull elk. And then the other part of my brain at the exact same time was like, that's not an elk. And then the cubs started screaming, but they were running the opposite direction. And this is through kind of post-holy snow and, very limited mobility. And then all of a sudden, mom popped up and was in a full-blown charge. And she stopped at probably 30 yards. Sorry about that. Probably 30 yards the first time. And then she kind of backed off and turned towards the cubs, made it about 3 steps, then spun around and charged to about 8 or so yards. Sorry. And then I had the dogs at heel telling them to stay. And then I'd turn towards mom and say, whoa. Because I certainly didn't feel like it was going to improve the matter by playing dead with 2 dogs sitting there. And I needed to make sure that they didn't exacerbate the situation. So I was turning to the dogs and saying, whoa, or, telling them to stay, turning to mom and saying, whoa. And she just could not make her mind up. She had her ears up. She was like on high alert. She wasn't laying her ears back. And she turned what would be the second to last time, kind of did a pump fake back towards the cubs and then spun and came towards me. And, I was a fly fishing guide at the time. And I just remember that I could have poked her in the eye with my fly rod. So she hit the brakes within 9 feet and stared at me, stared at each of the dogs, and then turned and left for the last time. And it was, I knew the entire time that this was really going to happen and I was going to get scratched up. But I had the little bit of confidence to keep the dogs in check and kind of keep my wits about me, primarily because she kept her ears up the whole time. And, like animal behavior, typically, whether it's a horse or a mule or a dog, they really lay their ears back when that's kind of go time. And so I've felt like we had a little leeway to try to help her make the right decision.
And what did the dogs do? They just sit there? Because they had to be losing a little bit.
They just sat there.
Wow.
And I'd trained them so heavily on sit, stay, come. And they were just not waterfowl dogs that ever broke. And they really proved it right there. So, but I had so much adrenaline in me, I turned to walk back the direction that I had come. Unfortunately, she was on the exact same path as my truck was. And I walked, before I even knew it, I walked into a completely different drainage. And, the whole area is known for grizzly bears. And it was, adrenaline carried me far and fast there. So,
did you have a firearm with you?
I did have a firearm. I had bear spray and a firearm. And
okay.
Everybody likes to ask, oh, did you poop your pants? And after being in those situations a few times now, you kind of, for me anyway, you have the ability to make a decision and you better carry it out. I think indecision is what gets you, and those animals are certainly aware. Like we know, our domestic animals are very aware of nervous people and how they react to that. And I think if the more confident you are, the more that bear second guesses whether it's worth it or not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, that's one thing I noticed on that, again, that's phenomenal that you guys were able to capture that clip of that grizzly charging you and Steve. But that was the one thing, like, you were so confident in that interaction as well. Steve was too, but you were uber confident. You did not waver. Steve was kind of, he was keeping an eye on things. I think he was a little more uncomfortable than you were, but you just sat there so confident, and that bear just, and then just disappeared, right?
I guess two things in that scenario. That my confidence came from truly knowing that bear was coming out where she came out, because I had gone up the mountain to keep tabs on her. She was like a sow with 3 cubs. She was very, noticeably a mature bear, noticeably very confident in where she was. She displayed a lot of like very aggressive behavior earlier in the day, not towards us. She still at that point had no knowledge that we were there, but I didn't feel comfortable just pretending like we were going to both go about our business down there in the same valley. So I had gone up to keep tabs on her, and she had just about left that valley when a black bear had come out on the same slope that she was on. It was that late evening, and the sun had been baking that slope. So the thermals took the smell of that black bear up to her, and she dropped a few hundred feet in just the blink of an eye, trying to get that black bear. And all of a sudden she was right back down on the valley floor again. And I had one of the cinematographers, this guy named Dom, great guy. But it was his first time in the backcountry, really. And he was just the most happy cinematographer on the planet, having like this charismatic, beautiful, big grizzly bear right in front of him. And I'm I said, hey, we gotta slide out of here. This is not a safe situation anymore. And we did, and we started making it down the slope. I told everyone that, we needed to pack up. We were in kind of some thicker brush at that point, but had like a couple of very great positions to view the mountainsides. And Steve was actually looking at a nice boar grizzly at the time, and a bear that we could have been pursuing, when I heard that sow coming down the mountain behind us. And I was able to see, as you go through the woods, you keep tabs of where you are, right? And so there's not that many great clean paths through that subalpine fir that tangles you up every step. And so I had kind of like mentally noted where, like, big boulder over here, this tree over here, this is a great path to be on. And I could hear her on that same path, just like my dog does now, just fully sucking up my scent on the ground. And she was coming down, and I was able to see her past that boulder, past that tree. So my confidence came from not having to guess where that bear was going to come out. She was on my trail. She was following me. I was 100% confident of that. And so at that point, I was like, okay, this is going to happen, and it's going to happen fast. Yeah. Whereas there wasn't enough time to relay all that information to Steve. I was just saying, this is going to happen. And so he had to keep his head a little bit more on a swivel than I did, where I was like, this is where this bear is going to come out. And that was actually, so I kind of had come up with a game plan of like, when she gets to this point, it's the point of no return. When she gets to here, I'm going to shoot my warning shot. The next round in the chamber is going to be a dead bear. And, very fortunately, you don't want to kill a sow with 3 cubs. So very fortunately, it was not a dead bear. And I think the warning shot and then the shock of seeing an entire crew of people versus one lone person was enough again to make that bear think just half a second longer instead of reacting to that foreign smell. But that was just an incredibly aggressive bear, and just we saw a lot of aggressive behavior that time with the last of the food. I think, all the sugar spiking in the fruit up there. They know winter's coming on. It's get the food while you can, that true like hyperphagia type of mode. And then, but I guess the other big piece of credit that I have to give Steve and like a failure from a guide's perspective is I didn't give any warning as to this is going to be a warning shot, not a kill shot.
Right.
So I think that a lot of people in that position probably would have backed me up with a kill shot to the bear, not a warning shot. And
yeah, he's still coming. She's still coming. We need to do something type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so, and Steve had told me later, he's like, yeah, your first shot. I thought, well, that's a little premature.
Okay.
Right. So, but that was my game plan, and it worked that time. So,
well, it worked perfectly. And there's two takeaways. And I think for a lot of people that haven't been in the mountain with grizzly bears, that grizzly bears are like half a mile for a grizzly bear. They can be there in seconds, like that, certainly a minute. They're so fast and they cover the landscape so quick. And 100 yards for a grizzly bear is literally a few seconds. And that shows a lot of maturity on both your parts. And I was really impressed. But I've actually never had a full on charge. I've had some very close calls. We're talking 50, 60, 70 yards, but not like bluff charges, but at a long distance. Never anything like that. And that's and both of you guys stood up, and I was so impressed, because it's tough to do that, and then also have that plan, because most people don't have a plan, and you very rarely. I guess you had that confidence and that privilege, I guess, of having been up that trail and having those marks and having the wherewithal to actually apply that, because a lot of people wouldn't apply that either. I guess that's probably the guiding experience kicking in as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to some simple things, right? Like a bunch of people don't move efficiently together. My kind of mantra that I picked up from that first outfitter was, things work out way better if you're set up and the animals come to you, versus trying to be on the move and trying to make something happen. And that wasn't the exact scenario there, but I think that definitely played a part in quick reaction thinking, and hopefully,
right.
I definitely like very much analyze that stuff over and over again. And in the ideal scenario, I think like the real pro way of doing it would have been to make sure that situation never happens in the first place, right? But you gotta, especially when you're hunting grizzly bears, you got to be amongst them. So
yes, yeah. Well, I thought you did a great job, and it was pretty cool. I'll tell you, it's great footage, that's for sure. Okay, Cal. So let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about your first light days. So were you the director of conservation for First Light? Is that correct? Do I have that title correct?
Ultimately, the director of conservation. My first business card was marketing, media, and sales.
Pretty diverse portfolio there. So, lots of times on Meat Eater, you talk about conservation, and obviously you have a deep conservation ethic. You've grown up with it. And you even talked about your mentor in your early days of having his master's in wildlife management and that sort of thing. So, maybe let's just touch a little bit on the conservation aspect of it, and why that was so important to you back in the First Light days, and I guess maybe even touch a little bit on any of the stuff that you're doing now through your position with Meat Eater and stuff like that?
Sure. I had like the biggest thing. So I worked in the Bob Marshall, in between Glacier National Park and the Bob Marshall. I worked in the Frank Church Wilderness. I spent a lot of time in wilderness areas. Like I said, I grew up in the Rattlesnake Wilderness. And I remember coming out of a hunting season, the end of my hunting season, and getting back to Missoula and being invited through a friend to go to a backcountry hunters and anglers meeting. And there were like, 15 people there, and there was free beer. So I was there for the free beer. And they started talking about the idea of this like land transfer idea, right? So our federally managed lands, we have 640 million acres of federally managed lands here in the U.S. side of things. And this like movement that apparently had always existed to sell that land off, give it to the states, let them sell it off to private interests. And then I got out of that meeting thinking, well, that just can't be right, and started doing a lot of reading and talking to a lot of friends that had gone on to careers in conservation, and started reading about, this idea that, wilderness areas aren't a good thing for, because people can't go there, was the way that it was put, or any sort of restrictions on federally managed lands weren't good, or just the fact that the government could own and manage lands wasn't good. And this was just baffling to me because I was making a very meager but very fulfilling career on these publicly managed lands. And every client I had left with this like giant smile on their face and this almost to a person sense of ownership of these spaces that they hadn't had before. And I was like firsthand witness to a lot of like these life-changing scenes for people who had never experienced a lot of these big outdoor remote places. And I just couldn't figure out how anybody could be against that. So when I went over to the First Light side of things, like I said, that first business card that I had was everything. There were 3 of us in the whole company. And I started kind of posting on behalf of First Light in regards to our company stance on public lands, and certainly the access of hunters and anglers to public lands. And once the 3 of us would get together at First Light, we were all very much on the same page. Like the creation story of the business was all on public lands, like chasing elk on public lands. And the idea was very simple. Like you just don't need technical hunting apparel if you want to put up a big high fence and sit in a box. Like, is it nice to have? Are you going to look good? Sure. But do you need it? Not really if there's a heater or an air conditioner sitting there, right? So that was kind of like the big green light and impetus behind First Light really kind of making a splash, as odd as it sounds, by having an opinion on a potentially very divisive topic.
Very cool. So, the years that you were there, that you spent working for them before you came across to Meat Eater, did that evolve? Did that change as the company grew? And obviously now things have changed with the acquisition through Meat Eater and stuff. But how did it evolve with your time there? And as you grew as a company, obviously when you got the three principals in the room making decisions, it's pretty easy to do your messaging. As you grew, did things change in that capacity, or is it pretty consistent?
Growth definitely brings on challenges in communication. However, it'd be really turning a blind eye to the success of First Light by getting away from conservation, public lands, access, really having a stance on and defining the access battle and what public lands mean to hunters is really what did our marketing for us. It wasn't the point, but we definitely got a lot of emails. Like in the marketing world, you don't get direct affirmation that often. So when you do, you pay attention. And we got a ton of emails saying, here's all the people that manufacture a merino wool t-shirt. They all cost about the same. This is why I'm buying yours. And that's definitely something that we still go back to today. We definitely recognize Ford Van Fossen at First Light, who had that director of conservation title. That's changed to a director of brand, which simply means, in my opinion, that conservation's so ingrained in the company that we don't necessarily need to call it out with a title. Does a phenomenal job. He's taking the conservation messaging and level up several notches by, it's time, treasure, and talent in the conservation world. I think Randy Newberg always coined that. But Ford's done a phenomenal job in putting together like some actual sweat equity into some big projects, specifically in Idaho, going through and planning tons of winter forage physically out there on the mountainside with the U.S. Forest Service and Mule Deer Foundation. And that's super, super important because, you just don't have that appreciation for the work that gets done if you can't do it occasionally. And we know that the cash is important. The messaging is important, but you also need to occasionally know what it's like to go out there and do some planting or some clearing of noxious weeds, some habitat improvement, so I'm incredibly proud of that dude, and he's very tireless at it. So one of the big things that we'll be talking about here shortly is our Camo for Conservation program, which is something that I had kind of presented on just prior to moving over to the Meat Eater side of things. And the idea, right, is we know that camouflage is an incredible marketing tool, right? It's like the camo pattern is the brand. So wherever you see that camo pattern, it better represent the brand, right? Which is why we had made a decision at First Light when we started making our own camo that we really wanted to limit what that camouflage pattern could be on. Mm-hmm. And I kind of pitched this idea where not only did we want to make sure that that camo, wherever it was, whatever it was on, represented us, but we also wanted that camo to represent something specific to conservation. So camo for conservation was born. So when we came out with the tree stand pattern, which is called Spectre, a percentage of every single sale, regardless of where that pattern is, what it's on, goes to the National Deer Alliance. And our waterfowl pattern that we just launched, no matter what you find that pattern on, a percentage of that goes to Delta Waterfowl. And we're still working on ways to make that program more impactful, but it's working. We're putting dollars to conservation with every sale associated with those patterns. And then, of course, we're doing a lot more on top of that. So
that's awesome. It's so encouraging to see socially responsible companies that care about conservation and they're willing to invest in it. There's a lot of lip service by a lot of companies out there, but when you see this commitment to conservation and there's a fiscal commitment to it, that's the stuff that gets me pretty excited about a brand and makes me want to support it. And then it's interesting that you guys get that tactile feedback where people are telling you, we buy your product because your conservation footprint. It's pretty inspiring, and it's very, very cool. One of the great things about the brand for sure. So while we're talking about this, how much impact would you say, like your relationship with, of course you were with First Light, then you came across the Meat Eater, and then there was the acquisition post that. How active were you in that process? Is that something that you were involved in, Ryan, or is that sort of completely independent of what you were doing in the Meat Eater realm of things for the acquisition itself?
I've always been a good guy to talk to, but I was there in that capacity, but I was not someone who was, dealing in mergers and acquisitions.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. So now with the way it is, the current situation, you talked about the work that's being done there. Are you involved on the First Light side of things, or is there any involvement there? Or is it strictly Meat Eater and you don't really do anything other than the relationships that you have from before with First Light?
Nope, still working with First Light. Ford, as I mentioned, he and I are on the phone or text very frequently. And same with Phelps game calls and FHF. And what I really work on help with is developing some brand specific conservation initiatives. So we're going to see some great stuff from Phelps game calls, and we're going to see some great stuff from FHF. To be very clear, both companies have done a lot on their own, but we've got some tricks up our sleeves, some things that we've learned over the years to make those pushes more impactful. And we have a pretty high bar where we want to see each brand, including like the Meat Eater home office brand, have some volunteer initiatives some local initiatives and some national initiatives. So that's something that we require out of all brands. And that's something that, that's part of my in the office hat that I wear, is coordinating with the brands and, finding the ways that we can be impactful with a conservation initiative or group that speaks very specifically to each brand's kind of core audience. So it's great. Like we have more people than certainly like the Phelps or FHF team has ever had. So we got to provide that extra bandwidth and not say, I'm going to also task you with doing all this on top of all your day-to-day operations that you need to get done. And so do some creative process with them, see what works with their brand, what they're really passionate about, what they would like to see changed or help out with. And then I can kind of take that and run and help build it out on my side of things.
Right on. So on that note, we've kind of touched on it already here, but what is a typical day in the office for Cal? Like what is are you sitting behind a desk 8 hours, or, obviously you've got the outreach communications, you got the hunts, you got the production side of things, but what would a typical kind of a week in the office look like for you in general?
I am still trying to find a typical week.
Okay. I kind of figured that was coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild. There's a lack of schedule, and it's very dynamic. So last week we worked in conjunction with Kent State, Ohio State, University of Texas, and North Bridger bison here, and we killed and field dressed, butchered 2.5-year-old bison bull using stone tools that would have been accurate for what the early people were using about 12,000 years ago. And that's not something that pops up on everybody's calendar right at work.
No, that's for sure.
So that'll be a really cool paper that will be coming out here in the next year. We were just, the physical part of that, and got to work with a really incredible team of archaeologists and anthropologists and paleoarchaeologists and do the work with primitive tools. And it was amazing. One of the most, cool opportunities I've ever had, if I'm being honest. And then I put all that stuff away, got on a plane real early, and went and joined the Sportsmen for the Boundary Waters canoe area on a trip to the Boundary Waters in northern Minnesota. And we, did a great, very abbreviated Boundary Waters trip, canoeing and portaging and fishing and some grouse hunting and lots of cooking over the fire to get, some firsthand knowledge about how special that area is. There's a proposed mine up there, which would be an open pit copper sulfide mine. And right now they're in another environmental review process, but it doesn't mean the mine wouldn't happen. I'm talking to you on the computer here, and I use a cell phone, and there's stuff that we dug out of the earth incorporated in all of that. So I'm not anti-mine, but that'd be a really tough place to have a mine that wouldn't have some real impacts on the surface water and groundwater that is incredibly important, certainly to the people there, but also just to our freshwater reserves. And it's an absolute hell of a place to recreate too. So saw some giant moose for the lower 48 anyway, and tons of birds, and caught some nice fish. And then I just got back here and have been working on my podcast, The Week in Review, while on the plane and interviewing people, and then took out a auction winner for a backcountry hunters and anglers auction around the Bozeman area to see some cool conservation landscapes and talk about our private land public access program, and chase a few birds there as well. And now I'm on the Talk is Sheep podcast.
Yeah, right on. Well, that is not a normal week for most people, for sure. So very cool. Well, so, let's just transition a little bit, if you don't mind here, Callaghan. Just touch a little bit about some, high-level stuff and stuff that you guys deal with as a brand all the time. And the Meat Eater brand does a great job about having these tough, complex conversations. But, and this, we could spend 100 podcasts talking about this stuff. But when you look at our space today, the hunting space, the outdoor space, wildlife, conservation, what are our biggest threats? So, I've always had so much respect for you and for Steve and the brand from Meat Eater for having these open dialogues and encouraging people to get into our space and appreciate it and respect it. But I'm sure it's in one of the thousands of podcasts you've done, but if you could talk to that specifically, what do you see in your eyes that is a real threat to conservation or wildlife, and then the hunting, to the sport of hunting, or whatever we want to coin that as? So.
Oh, well, what really comes to mind, right? I think the grizzly bear situation in British Columbia is a great example. I have been around grizzlies my entire life, living here in Montana, but never came to be such an incredible grizzly bear advocate and appreciator as I did by guiding grizzlies and hunting them in British Columbia. I love those bears. I want to see them thrive and survive. And I think by removing hunters from the process, like the province of BC has done, will ultimately damage those bears. The hunters are some of the best advocates out there, and truly some of the people with the most intimate knowledge of the species or resource, if you'd like to call it that. To be clear, something I think about, during that grizzly charge that we talk about, it would have been appropriate in hindsight to shoot that bear because of the human life that was, very much in the balance at that point. It's not worth getting killed over, and those animals are doing great from a population level, and we like to have things so crystal clear, yes, no, black, white, however you want to frame it. And the natural world doesn't exist in that fashion. So it's all difficult to talk about. And how do you love a bear but want to kill it at the same time? It's interesting. But I think one of the largest threats to hunting and certainly modern conservation is this idea of removing people from these wild landscapes and distancing ourselves from the wilderness, distancing ourselves from these natural foods, and becoming reliant on synthetic food chain. And that's something that threatens, I think, our open spaces, and in a way that most people just can't fathom. So if we become reliant on food that doesn't come from the ground and the outside, then we have, no reason to save it, no reason to save that ground. And I think that's a real threat to, folks like us that grew up wanting nothing more than to be outside.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. And I guess, that's one thing Mediator's done such a great job of, sharing this message, and, you guys as a brand just continue to resonate, your messaging and again, we don't need to preach it to the choir. We all, as hunters, get that narrative, but it's getting outside our own community and being able to have that dialogue. And that's one thing that you guys absolutely thrive at, and has been a huge success. And just normalizing that talk around hunting, which, no one's ever been able to do it to the level that Mediator has.
It's a big audience. It's a great audience. It's an ongoing conversation. And we're all learning. So I really just want everybody to be engaged in that conversation, and certainly know how to engage others in that conversation. One of the things that I think would be another threat, right, is hunters are typically very private people, and that extends out to our ability to advocate for ourselves and our pursuits. And, I get it every single week is not an exaggeration, that I get emails from people saying, hey, I'm 40 some years old, I'm 50 some years old, and I just contacted my representative for the first time ever. And that's what we need more of. We need people who are able to reach out to their elected officials and articulate why they need to be represented in the way that they need to be represented. So we know that there's a lot of other folks who don't see the way that we do, that are better at that game than a lot of hunters. And we need to step up in that regard big time.
Well said. I love the call to action. So awesome. I love it. Okay, let's to wrap things up, let's just do some low-hanging fruit here. So what are your 5 must-have pieces of gear in your pack or whatever? When you're out on the landscape, what are your 5 things that you absolutely need, that you love and just cannot do without?
A Bic lighter is
okay.
Way up there. Pine pitch, good saturated pitch wood, a Bic lighter, a pocket knife. I prefer a non-serrated blade, smooth edge. Wool socks. And I mean, really, like, wool base layers will get you through a lot of tough times, if and a positive mental attitude, really. Like, I was just explaining to somebody that there's a very subtle difference, but there's a big difference between people who think that their mobility is hindered because they have to walk, and people who think they can get anywhere because they have to walk. There's folks who think this is tough until I can catch a ride, and there's folks who think I have unlimited freedom because I can walk. and you can
Yeah.
cover some miles if you believe in your feet.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I just love that your response. I was half expecting, oh, you need this expensive piece of gear and that expensive piece of gear, and oh, you can't go anywhere without an inReach, and it's the five most basic things, and not even brand dropping either. So pretty cool. I love that response. That makes me really happy to hear your response on that. Cool. Okay, another easy one for you, kind of a fun one. So, you've done a lot of hunting, you've seen a lot of territory, you've been a lot of places. What's the bucket list hunt? What's the dream hunt? If you had one hunt left in you, what hunt are you going to do? Anywhere, any place, any cost, it's yours. What's that hunt?
I want to let you down here. I had 10 days in the woods alone.
Yeah.
That's just like true happiness for me. I like being able to traverse some terrain, and God willing, one of these days I'll draw a sheep tag, and maybe that'll be it. But I love, high alpine mule deer is incredible. Just all of those animals up in that zone where you get to traverse some big valleys, run some big ridges, see a long way, and kind of have that. I like a challenge, but if there's one thing I recognize in myself, like at the end of the day, the thing that I value the most is that time, like just that time in the woods. Like, you need a few days to decompress, and you need a big enough chunk of time before you have to leave to forget that you have to leave.
Yeah, for sure. So on that note, Cal, I find it interesting, like with you, you're always, you're a public figure, you're highly recognized. Everyone wants a piece of Cal. And then, a lot of what you do is on a camera. It's on a hunt with a cameraman and a crew and a cinematographer. And, does that change the way you do things? The cool thing is you have to do all this stuff for a living, but there is a compromise too. You're a celebrity. You got all this stuff to deal with. Talk about, how you manage that. And, you never get the 10 days in the wilderness by yourself ever. That doesn't exist anymore. So, how is that for you?
The reason that I do this gig is because there's a huge opportunity with a platform to do some good. And I think, right now we have a lot of opportunity in a short time frame to make sure that we're leaving this place better than we found it. I have gotten so much fulfillment and enjoyment from my time in the outdoors that this is my opportunity to make sure that that's around for somebody else to stumble into, So, and I know from all the feedback that we get that there's a lot of people who, are looking to have that opportunity somehow, some way, and it's not all I know from taking people on hikes that not everybody gets the same enjoyment I get out of the places that I like to walk. So there's varying degrees of that sense of wilderness, right? It's not all a capital W, but and I will say that the folks that accompany me for work are phenomenal, and they appreciate the outdoors. If you want to really be able to talk to somebody about how cool a spot is, a photographer is a great person to do that with, right? They have an eye for the landscapes and the light, and it's a good way to be on the same level with somebody. And, walking with 3 or 4 folks everywhere you go definitely alters the way you move, because you have to hide sound and smell and movement in in a majorly different way than just slinking through a spot on your own. But it's a incredible opportunity, so and I've get to slide into people's lives and check out their cool spots in a way that I never would, right? It's like I've seen parts of every state and not every province yet that are not on guidebooks or hiking trails that you would never ever go to by trying to figure it out on your own. So that's, and the little bits of culture, right? Like every camp's a little different, the way they cook, the way they do things, how they came to do things in that fashion. It's pretty incredible to go kind of get that snapshot of people's lives.
Very cool.
Did I dodge the question or answer it?
Yeah, it was a darn good response. I have to give you that. So on that note, so much for the bucket list stuff. But let's talk a little bit about, and maybe you can't talk about it because you guys, I know you got a production schedule and you've got stuff there. But are you able to share any of your fall hunt plans with us, or is that all kind of under wraps because you guys are televising that stuff? How does that work? Can you talk about it?
Well, you kind of yes and no. I mean, I'll be going out to cover some cool public access stories here shortly in South Dakota, and then we'll actually be in South Dakota for about a month, which
cool.
They call it one of the many places they call a sportsman's paradise, and they're probably right. And get to take the dog with me on that one. And then I've got a couple of tags that I'm looking to get out after. And they're both here in Montana in the home state, but I'm not going to film either one of those.
Okay, cool. So you get to actually do some hunting for yourself where you're 10 days in the wilderness. So yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm bringing some first timers along to make sure that that's something I like to do every year, and try to get folks started on the right foot, and hopefully not have them say, "Boy, that hunting stuff's not for me."
Right.
But,
yeah.
Really looking forward to that, and we have definitely some cool shoots coming up that I probably shouldn't spoil for everybody.
Yeah, no,
But
fair enough.
You'll be very happy when you come out. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. No, I don't need any secrets. So awesome. Well, hey, Cal, I just can't thank you enough, and the brand Meat Eater and everything that you guys, whoever you work with, it's it's one of the bright lights of our outreach in the hunting community, and Steve and all the crew at Meat Eater and yourself in particular are just doing a fantastic job. And, the stuff you guys put out, I love to consume, and so many people do. So anyway, I just want to thank you guys for all you do at Meat Eater for us as hunters and people that care about things associated with hunting, conservation, public land, all that sort of stuff. And in particular, you're one of the guys I've followed for a long time and just appreciate all you stand for and all you continue to put out there. So thank you for making time for us today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. And for everybody listening, I'll tell you, board members are not paid positions. That's a lot of volunteer hours. So when you get involved with the conservation organization, think of what's happening here on the Talk is Sheep podcast. That's a lot of time.
Appreciate it. Well, awesome. Well, how's Snort doing, by the way, after that snake bite? What's going on there?
She's doing great. She's
Okay.
doing great. So, and like I said, I'm going to keep her with me for a solid month here, and we'll get a lot of exercise, and and we'll definitely find some birds.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. I'm glad to hear that she's doing well, and you have a great fall, and look forward to seeing some of these hunts, and maybe we'll try and connect in the new year and get an update on the fall and the winter for you guys.
Hey, that sounds great. Have a great season, and thank you so much for having me on.
Appreciate it, Cal. Thank you.